For years, the United States built what many believed was one of the most powerful missile defense networks on Earth across the Persian Gulf, a layered shield designed to detect enemy launches thousands of kilometers away, track them in real time, and destroy them before they ever reach their targets. But now, that shield may have just taken a serious hit. Reports are emerging that two key pieces of America's missile defense system in the Gulf have been destroyed, not damaged, not temporarily disabled, destroyed, and these aren't small installations. One of them is a long-range early warning radar in Qatar, a massive system designed to detect ballistic missile launches across huge parts of the Middle East, the kind of radar that gives commanders those critical few minutes of warning when a missile is launched. The other targets were in the United Arab Emirates. Badidijamber and Soar. Weni der Skirridipur, a radar linked to one of America's most advanced missile defense systems, along with a THAAD interceptor battery, were reportedly taken out. To understand how serious that is, think of it like this. Imagine a high-tech security system protecting a city. Cameras watch the horizon, sensors track incoming threats, and interceptors act like automated guards ready to stop anything dangerous. Now imagine someone blinds the cameras, disables the sensors, and knocks out the guards. That's essentially what these strikes are claiming to have done. Even more striking is the message coming from Iran's military leadership. Officials from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, often called the IRGC, publicly declared that Iran's missile hand has been opened. In other words, they're signaling that their missile forces are now fully in play. If these claims are even partially true, this isn't just another exchange of strikes in a tense region. It could represent something much bigger, a direct challenge to one of the most sophisticated defense systems the United States has ever deployed overseas. Which raises a critical question. How did Iran manage to dismantle parts of America's multi-billion-dollar missile defense network? Was it luck, a one-time vulnerability, or the result of a carefully planned strategy designed to break the system piece by piece? Because the answer may reveal something much deeper, a shift in how modern wars are fought, where destroying weapons isn't always the goal. Sometimes the real objective is to destroy the system behind them. To understand what may have happened, we need to rewind and look at the sequence of events that reportedly unfolded. Because when you examine the timeline of the strikes, something very interesting starts to appear. To understand why this event has caught so much attention from military analysts, we need to look closely at how the strikes reportedly unfolded. Because according to statements from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, this wasn't a random attack. It was a coordinated operation aimed directly at the backbone of America's missile defense network in the Gulf. Think of it less like firing blindly at targets, and more like systematically dismantling a machine, one critical part at a time. Phase 1. Blinding the early warning system. The first reported strike targeted a massive early warning radar in Qatar known as the ANFPS-132 Block 5 early warning radar. This radar is not just another sensor. It's one of the most powerful missile detection systems the United States operates overseas. Installed around 2013 at a cost of roughly $1.1 billion, the radar has an extraordinary detection range, up to 5,000 kilometers. That means it can detect ballistic missile launches from thousands of miles away, giving military commanders precious minutes to react. Those minutes matter. A ballistic missile can travel at speeds of several kilometers per second. Without early detection, interception becomes almost impossible. So, in many ways, this radar functions like the eyes of the entire defense system. If those eyes are gone, the rest of the network suddenly has far less time to respond. According to reports, this radar installation was struck and destroyed, a claim that gained additional attention when Qatar's defense ministry acknowledged damage to the site. For host nations to confirm something like this publicly is unusual, which made analysts take the claim more seriously. But the operation didn't stop there. Phase 2, disabling the tracking radar. The next target reportedly appeared hundreds of kilometers away in the United Arab Emirates. Here, the strike focused on a radar system connected to one of America's most advanced missile defense platforms, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or TEAAADE system. This radar performs a very specific job. If the early warning radar detects a missile launch, the THAAD radar takes over the next stage of the process. It locks onto the incoming missile, tracks its path with extreme precision, and feeds targeting data to the interceptors that will attempt to destroy it. Think of it like switching from binoculars to a sniper scope. Without that tracking radar, the interceptor system essentially loses its targeting capability. The launchers might still exist, but they can't accurately engage incoming threats. And according to the claims, this radar was also knocked out. Phase 3. Eliminating the interceptors. Finally came the last reported strike, the THAAD interceptor battery itself. This is the part of the system that actually launches missiles to destroy incoming threats in midair, when a ballistic missile enters the final phase of its flight. The interceptors are designed to meet it high above the atmosphere and destroy it through direct kinetic impact, basically hitting the incoming missile at incredible speed. No explosives required, just pure physics. Each THAAD battery represents hundreds of millions of dollars in equipment, including launchers, interceptors, radar systems, and control centers. According to Iranian statements, this final strike put the battery out of operational orbit. Now, step back and look at the sequence. First, the long-range radar that detects launches. Second, the tracking radar that guides the interceptors. Third, the interceptor battery itself. That sequence matters, because if these strikes happened in that order, it suggests something important. This wasn't random targeting. It looks a lot more like a deliberate plan to dismantle a defense network step by step. And to fully understand why that matters, we need to take a closer look at how missile defense systems actually work together as a network, because these systems aren't designed to operate alone. They rely on a chain of sensors and weapons working together in perfect coordination. Break one part of that chain, and yeah, the whole system starts to struggle. To really understand why these strikes could be such a big deal, we need to step back and look at how a modern missile defense system actually works. Because systems like Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, aren't just a group of launchers sitting on a base waiting to fire missiles. They are part of a highly connected network. Every part of the system depends on the others. If one piece fails, the whole system becomes weaker. Think of it like a professional soccer team. You don't just need a striker to score goals. You need defenders, midfielders, and a goalkeeper all working together. Remove one position, and the entire team becomes vulnerable. Missile defense works the same way. There are three critical components that make the system function. First, early warning radars, the eyes. The first layer is the early warning radar. These are enormous radar installations designed to detect missile launches thousands of kilometers away. They constantly scan the sky, watching for the heat signatures and trajectories of ballistic missiles. The radar in Qatar, the ANFPS-132 Block 5 early warning radar, is one of these systems. Its job is simple, but critical: spot the threat as early as possible, because when a ballistic missile launches, time becomes the most valuable resource. Commanders might have just a few minutes to detect it, calculate its path, and respond. Without early detection, everything that comes next becomes much harder. That's why these radars are often described as the eyes of the missile defense network. Second, fire control radars. The targeting scope. Once a missile is detected, the next step is tracking it with precision. This is where fire control radars come in, like the radar connected to the THAAD system in the United Arab Emirates. These radars lock onto the incoming missile and track its exact path through the sky. They calculate its speed, direction, and predicted impact point. Then they send that information to the interceptors. If the early warning radar is like binoculars scanning the horizon, the fire control radar is like a high-powered targeting scope zooming in on the exact threat. Without this targeting data, interceptors can't accurately engage their target. Third, interceptor batteries, the hand that strikes. Finally, we reach the last layer, the interceptors themselves. This is where systems like Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, come in. When a missile enters the final phase of its flight, the THAAD battery launches interceptors designed to collide with the incoming warhead at extremely high speeds. The intercept doesn't rely on explosives. Instead, it uses something called kinetic kill technology, essentially smashing into the missile with enough force to destroy it. Imagine trying to hit a bullet with another bullet, while both are traveling several times faster than the speed of sound. That's the level of precision involved. So, if we simplify the entire system, it looks like this early warning radar is basically the eyes. Fire control radar acts as the targeting scope, and THAAD interceptors are kind of like the hand that strikes. Each part, feeds information to the next. But here's the key point. If someone destroys the eyes, the system struggles to see. If someone destroys the targeting scope, the system can't aim. And if someone destroys the interceptors, the system can't strike. In other words, the network only works when every part is functioning together. And when you look back at the sequence of strikes being reported, something starts to stand out. The targets weren't just random military bases, they were actually specific pieces of a larger defensive machine, which leads to a much more interesting question. What if the goal wasn't simply to damage equipment, but to break the entire system behind it? At first glance, the strikes might look like a simple attack on military equipment, a radar here, a missile battery there, but when military analysts looked at the order of the targets, many noticed something far more strategic. This pattern points to a concept used in modern warfare called sensor-to-shooter disruption. To understand this, imagine a relay race. One runner starts the race, passes the baton to the next runner, and that runner passes it again until the final runner crosses the finish line. Missile defense works in a very similar way. Information moves step by step through a chain. Sensors detect the threat, radars track and calculate its path, weapons receive the data and fire to intercept it. Military planners often call this process the kill chain. If every link in that chain works perfectly, a missile can be detected, tracked, and destroyed before it reaches its target. But here's the important part. You don't always have to destroy the weapon itself to stop the system. Sometimes all you need to do is break the chain. Think of it like cutting the internet connection to a computer. The computer may still be physically intact, but suddenly it can't communicate, access information, or perform its job properly. And that's exactly what these strikes appear designed to do. Step 1. Shorten the warning time. By hitting the long-range radar in Qatar, the first strike may have reduced the amount of time defenders have to react. Without that radar scanning thousands of kilometers away, incoming missiles might only be detected much later in their flight. That means commanders have less time to calculate trajectories and launch interceptors. In missile defense, losing even 2 or 3 minutes can be the difference between interception and impact. Step 2. Blind the interceptors. The second strike targeted the tracking radar linked to the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system in the United Arab Emirates. Now, remember what that radar does. It locks onto incoming missiles and provides precise targeting information. If that radar is destroyed, the interceptor launchers may still exist physically, but they suddenly lose their ability to accurately track targets. It's kind of like having a powerful rifle, but no scope and no targeting data. The weapon is there, but its effectiveness drops dramatically. Step 3. Remove the final layer. Then comes the final strike, the interceptor battery itself. Once the early warning radar is gone and the tracking radar is disabled, destroying the launchers removes the last layer of defense entirely. At that point, the defensive system is no longer just weakened, it's broken. Why this strategy matters. What makes this approach significant is that it focuses on systems instead of individual targets. In older styles of warfare, the goal might be to destroy as many weapons, bases, or vehicles as possible. But in modern warfare, the real strength of many militaries comes from networks, sensors, data links, satellites, and command systems all connected together. So instead of attacking everything, a smarter strategy is often to identify the most critical nodes and remove them. Destroy just a few key components, and the entire network starts to collapse. That's why analysts see this kind of attack as far more sophisticated than simply launching large waves of missiles. It suggests careful planning, detailed intelligence, and a clear understanding of how the opponent's systems work. And if this interpretation is correct, it points to something even more important. Because it may signal that Iran's missile strategy itself has evolved, moving from sheer volume of fire to something much more precise and calculated. For many years, Iran's missile strategy followed a fairly simple idea: overwhelm the enemy with numbers. Military planners often described it as a saturation approach. The logic was straightforward. If you launch enough rockets and missiles at once, eventually some will get through, even against strong defenses. This is why Iran built one of the largest missile arsenals in the Middle East. Thousands of short-range and medium-range missiles capable of striking military bases, oil facilities, and strategic infrastructure across the region. In past conflicts, that approach showed up clearly. Large barrages of rockets, multiple launch points, sheer volume designed to overwhelm defenses. But the operation being described here suggests something very different. Instead of flooding the sky with missiles, the strikes appear to have targeted very specific pieces of infrastructure, the kind that keep a defense network running. That requires a completely different level of preparation. First, it means mapping out the enemy's defense architecture. Not just knowing where bases are located, but understanding which systems are most important to the network. Second, it requires precise intelligence. To hit critical assets like the ANFPS 132 Block 5 early warning radar or components connected to the terminal high-altitude area defense, you need accurate targeting data, sometimes down to very specific coordinates. And third, it requires missiles capable of striking those targets with high precision. In the past decade, Iran has invested heavily in improving the accuracy of its missile systems. Some of its newer designs are believed to have circular error probabilities measured in just tens of meters, meaning they can hit very close to their intended target. That level of accuracy changes the equation. Instead of launching dozens of missiles hoping a few get through, planners can now focus on hitting the most critical nodes in an enemy's defense system. Think of it like attacking a power grid. You could try to destroy every building connected to the grid, which would take enormous effort, or you could simply destroy a few key substations. Once those nodes go down, large parts of the network stop working. That appears to be the logic behind this operation. Carefully identify the most important components of the defense network, strike them in a specific sequence, and create a cascade effect where the loss of one system weakens the next. This kind of planning reflects something analysts have been watching closely for years: the steady modernization of Iran's missile doctrine. It suggests a shift away from purely quantity-based attacks towards something more strategic precision system warfare, and if that's the direction things are moving, it has serious implications not just for one battle or one region, but for how countries think about defense in the future. Because once a defense network can be dismantled piece by piece, the question becomes much bigger. So, what does this mean for the United States and its military strategy in the region? If the reported damage to these systems is accurate, even just partially, it creates several serious challenges for the United States. Missile defense networks are not something you can simply replace overnight. When one part of the system goes down, it can create a temporary gap in protection, especially in a region as strategically sensitive as the Persian Gulf. Let's break down the three biggest issues that could emerge from this situation. First, a potential capability gap. The first problem is simple: coverage. Missile defense systems are carefully positioned so their sensors and interceptors overlap, creating a protective shield over important areas like military bases, shipping lanes, and energy infrastructure. But if key radars or interceptor batteries are destroyed, that shield may suddenly develop blind spots. For example, the loss of a powerful early warning radar, like the ANFPS 132 Block 5 early warning radar, could reduce the amount of time available to detect and respond to incoming missiles. Instead of having several minutes to prepare an interception, defenders might only have seconds, or maybe just a minute. And in missile defense, time is everything. The same problem applies if elements of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, network are removed from operation. Each THAAD battery protects a large area, but it really cannot cover an entire region alone. Remove one layer, and the defense grid becomes weaker. Second, the replacement problem. The second challenge is logistics and cost. Missile defense systems like that are among the most expensive pieces of military hardware in the world. A single THAAD battery can cost between $800 million and over $1 billion, depending on configuration and the number of interceptors included. But the price tag is only part of the problem. Deploying one isn't as simple as flying in a new piece of equipment. These systems require transport aircraft or ships to move the hardware, secure bases, and infrastructure, integration with radar networks and command systems, and trained crews and technicians. In many cases, full deployment can take months, sometimes even longer. And during that time, any replacement system could itself become a target if tensions remain high. Third, the cost asymmetry problem. The third issue might be the most troubling from a strategic perspective. In many cases, the missiles used to destroy these systems cost far less than the systems themselves. Think about the imbalance. A missile that costs a few $100,000, or even a few million, might be able to destroy equipment worth hundreds of millions or even billions. It's a bit like using a cheap drone to destroy an expensive fighter jet sitting on a runway. The economics really heavily favor the attacker. This is something military planners around the world have been worried about for years. Advanced defensive systems are incredibly powerful, but they are also extremely expensive and vulnerable to targeted strikes. And if offensive weapons keep getting cheaper and more precise, the balance between attack and defense may start to shift. But the United States isn't the only player affected by these developments, because across the Gulf, several countries have built their security strategies around the assumption that American missile defenses will help protect them, and right now, those governments are likely asking some difficult questions. Events like this don't just affect the country that owns the equipment, they send shockwaves through the entire region. In the Persian Gulf, several countries have spent decades building their security strategies around a simple assumption. The United States would provide a strong defensive umbrella against missile threats. That umbrella includes American bases, advanced radar systems, and missile defense platforms like the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD. Countries such as Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia have invested heavily in this partnership. Their security planning assumes that if a major missile threat emerges, American systems and coordination will help intercept those weapons before they reach cities, military bases, or energy facilities. But when key parts of that defensive network are reportedly destroyed, it naturally raises uncomfortable questions. First, can these systems be reliably protected? Missile defense equipment is incredibly advanced, but it is also stationary. Radars and interceptor batteries are fixed installations. Once an adversary identifies their locations, they can potentially become targets. Second, how strong is the defensive shield in a real conflict? For years, missile defense systems have been presented as a major deterrent, a way of convincing potential attackers that their missiles would simply be shot down. But if an opponent can dismantle parts of that system first, the calculation changes. And third, should Gulf countries rely less on outside protection and invest more in their own defenses? Some countries in the region are already thinking along those lines. Over the past decade, Gulf states have purchased large numbers of missile defense systems, early warning radars, and air defense platforms of their own. But even with those investments, many of these systems still rely on integration with American networks. So, when something like this happens, it triggers a wave of quiet conversations between governments. Diplomats meet behind closed doors. Military planners review contingency plans. Intelligence agencies start reassessing the regional balance of power. Because in geopolitics, perception matters almost as much as reality. If allies begin to question how secure the defense umbrella really is, they may start adjusting their strategies, strengthening their own militaries, diversifying their partnerships, or rethinking how they deal with potential threats. And that's why the impact of these strikes could extend far beyond the immediate damage. But before drawing any firm conclusions, there's something important we need to address, because right now, there are still significant uncertainties about what actually happened.